For further analysis, we're joined by Lee Jones. He's a professor of political economy and international relations at Queen Mary University of London. Thank you so much for being with us, Lee. So, as we're hearing there from our correspondent John, Donald Trump today responding to China's retaliatory tariffs, saying they played it wrong, they panicked, the one thing they cannot afford to do. How do you anticipate Beijing will respond here?
I don't think the Chinese have panicked. I think they've responded in a proportionate way, 34% to match the tariffs imposed by Trump. And this is a long-standing pattern of Chinese behavior. They retaliated to the tariffs that Trump initiated in his first term. Of course, that's when the trade war started in 2017. They also retaliated to the relatively small tariffs that Trump imposed when he slapped tariffs on Mexico and Canada. So this is a predictable move. It's directly proportionate. And I think it's to be expected. China is not going to take this kind of treatment lying down. It's going to do what it can to retaliate and defend its own interests. That's only rational from China's perspective. Probably it sees itself as being able to bear the cost of this retaliation. US imports to China are only about 6% of total imports into China. And China is experiencing deflation at the moment rather than inflation. Whereas what the United States has done is put tariffs on all of its imports from the entire world, and it's also suffering from persistent sticky inflation domestically, which obviously tariffs will vastly increase. So it's the United States that needs to be worried about the costs of its tariff policy at the moment more than China, I think.
And on that, Lee, Donald Trump here seems to be trying to unwind some of China's influence with these tariffs. But given the fact that some of the nations that he's imposed tariffs on in Asia are right on China's doorstep, and so how could this potentially backfire for him?
I think it's important that we don't think that there is some clever grand strategy behind what Trump is doing, as if he's imposing these tariffs so that he can pick people off and pursue some kind of clever geopolitical plan. There is no coherence in what he's doing at all. So only yesterday, Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, was in Asia trying to rally Asian states against China's unfair and coercive trade practices. At the same time, that Asian partners of the United States are slapped with incredibly high tariff rates, not seen since the Second World War. So this is going to alienate practically everybody. People will still have to work with the United States because it is so powerful, it is such an important market. But this is not going to win friends for the United States. It is an extraordinarily poor way to compete geopolitically with China.
So some of those nations in the Indo-Pacific surely turning around thinking, how can we trust Donald Trump when on the one hand, he's telling us here that China's the enemy that they need to turn away from, but then at the same time also being imposed these tariffs from a country that they thought was an ally.
Yes, well, I think a lot of states in Asia have long been a bit dubious about the United States, not really seeing it as an ally, not really seeing it as a truly a partner that has their interests at stake, as being quite a self-interested and bullying partner. They often experience more economic coercion from the United States than they do from China, in fact. But they've often wanted the United States to remain engaged on security grounds and, of course, to cooperate economically with the United States. But there's long been concerns about US reliability going right back to the end of the Cold War. And what Trump is doing is showing that the United States is not a reliable partner and it's not an ally. The way that it has treated Ukraine is an obvious case in point. And now everybody in the Asia Pacific will be looking and thinking, well, could we be next? If you're the Philippines, for example, and you're a close partner of the United States, aligning yourself with the United States against China, will you be next? Will the United States come and do a shakedown of you? The cost that Trump is trying to impose on Ukraine in exchange for US support, that's a level of reparations that's worse than the reparations imposed on Germany, the defeated enemy power at the end of World War I. So everybody in the Asia Pacific, I think, was a little bit complacent. I think we're all a bit complacent in not really taking Trump at his word, not listening to what he's saying, but assuming he'll do something different. We need to take him a lot more literally and not just seriously.
Lee Jones, Professor of Political Economy and International Relations at Queen Mary University of London. Thank you so much for your analysis.